Good afternoon to everyone, and apologies for the delay. We had some technical issues, and hence I will not only say a quick few welcome words, but also for now, I will moderate or chair this event. So my name is Charlie Salonius-Pasternak. I'm the lead researcher in the Center on U.S. Power and Politics at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. My second hat at the Institute is Nordic, Finnish, Swedish security and defense. And occasionally these two hats converge in places like Afghanistan. But since no one came here today to listen to me, but rather to our guest speaker today, and probably our original chair, Deborah McCarthy, who is the US ambassador to Lithuania from 2013-2016, an exciting time to be there. I will keep this very brief. So, Lieutenant General Frederick Ben Hodges was Commanding General of US Army Europe. And while it's certainly been an interesting position over the years and decades, it is hard for me to imagine a more interesting and challenging time to be holding that position than the years surrounding Russia's initial start to the war against Ukraine, 2014 to 2018. And today we're going to be talking about war in Ukraine, the Transatlantic Alliance, and I'm sure getting some reflections on what this means concretely for NATO and how NATO may evolve from EFP to maybe something heavier. And of course, maybe we'll take a glancing comment also on whether or not NATO may have two new members by the time all of us follow the Madrid communique at the end of the summer. But with these words, I will give the floor off to Ben Hodges. Take it away.
Okay, Charlie, thank you very much, and I appreciate the privilege of everybody's time here. I'm in Helsinki, actually, at FinCENT, as you can see behind me, in my capacity as a NATO senior mentor, where I'm part of a course that Finnish officers are going through on how NATO does operational planning. This was actually scheduled almost 2 years ago, but the course kept getting pushed to the right because of COVID. So it's just very fortunate timing for me to actually be in Helsinki at FinCENT right now, while there is so much interest and attention on Russia's war against Ukraine, but also obviously within the against the backdrop of Finland and Sweden more and more seriously considering application to join the alliance. So the fact that I'm here now working on NATO planning processes with Finnish officers is only a wonderful coincidence. Okay, so I think originally Ambassador McCarthy she wanted to start off with asking a series of questions, but since we don't have her, what I'll do is address 4 or 5 points, Charlie, and then turn it back to you, and then of course open it up. I think we have an hour total here, and I would be happy to take any questions so that this is of interest to everybody. First of all, of course, the situation right now, it's obvious that Russia failed in every one of its objectives during the first 8 weeks of this conflict for a variety of things that we can talk about. Clearly, the Ukrainians have fought so well, and the Ukrainian population has also been incredible of how they have fought and resisted and what they've put up with. That's been impressive. And also we've been reminded of the incredible power of positive leadership from the example of President Zelensky himself. So that's part of it. But the other part is that the Russians were absolutely unprepared for what they started in terms of, the intelligence, the logistics, I mean, they didn't have an operational design because they completely misunderstood what they were about to get into. And I think also the decades of corruption inside the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Russian system has been made manifestly clear. Even with something like the sinking of the Russian ship Moskva, what we've learned is that the flagship of the Russians' Black Sea Fleet had seriously outdated radar. Its crew of mostly conscripts, completely untrained for firefighting and for damage control. So, in other words, there's several things that have gone wrong for them, all of their own making. What does that mean now? So, of course, the Russians have decided that they've realized that they will not be able to take Kyiv, they will not be able to take Odessa, and so they have decided that they're going to go ahead and declare that phase one was a success, and now they're shifting to another phase, which is focused on something that they think was probably more doable, which is to capture or take over the rest of Donbass, and then declare victory. And I think that's all they're going to try to do this year in terms of big pieces. And the reason I say this is they don't have the capacity. I beg your pardon. They don't have the capacity to do much more, and yet they've decided not to mobilize the reserves. That was a big signal to me that there's probably not going to be a phase three this year. In other words, another offensive that heads towards Kyiv or heads towards Odessa. Right now, land forces are about peer to peer, numbers wise, and so they just don't have the capacity. But yet they're not mobilizing reserves. I think that's a decision based on domestic considerations and also because they do not want to have to explain to the public why what was supposed to be a cakewalk denazification liberation campaign, why they're having to deal with so many casualties and mobilize reserves. So that's kind of where it is. What does that mean now? It means that the Russian forces are probably going to have to launch their next big attacks before they're ready. Because I think this May 9th, not everybody agrees with this, and I could be wrong, but I think this May 9th milestone, the celebration of Victory Day, the end of the Second World War or the Great Patriotic War, is such a big deal that they're looking for something to celebrate. And I think they're going to pull out all the stops to finally eliminate Mariupol, which they have not been able to do in 9 weeks, which is incredible. That should have been the first city to fall. So that's also an indicator. And to declare how much of the Donbass region they have liberated. So I think that's what they're aiming for. Of course, there are a lot of people that are watching this closely that are concerned that Ukrainian forces might be encircled. I mean, this does look like 1943 when the Soviets and the Red Army launched their counteroffensives against the German Wehrmacht, the Dnieper River offensive, huge numbers, much larger than what we have today. But the Russian army today is not the Red Army of 1943. And I think for them to pull this off, they would have to have solved an awful lot of problems in just a short amount of time, which I don't think they're capable of solving, because some of these are cultural, to work joint together, where you integrate air, land, and sea forces and special forces. They have appointed a single commander, General Vornikov, but they still have 8 combined arms army headquarters under him. That is a ridiculous amount of headquarters. And yet, when you think about the Russian methodology, it is so centralized. So they still have not solved their command and control issues yet. And I just don't know that they've got the logistics in place yet to launch these big breakthrough attacks. I could be wrong. Clearly, they're going to use mass. They're not worried about their own casualties from a moral standpoint. So I think we're going to continue to see them hammering away at Ukrainian cities with missiles, murdering innocent people, and pushing their own troops against the Ukrainian defenses. Let me address just two more points, Charlie, and then I'll hand back to you.
And probably Deborah.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, if she's on, great. The visit last night of Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin obviously was extremely important. I was very proud that they were there, that they came in by train, and that they still did it, even though the plan of their visit was revealed by President Zelensky a couple of days earlier. I mean, I could imagine that the security details for both secretaries were having heart attacks, but these two leaders decided, no, this is important. So I'm glad they did it. So that's critical. The fact that the secretary announced that we're going to start bringing our diplomats back into Ukraine, I thought was extremely important. Obviously, I'd like to see the embassy open up immediately, but at least we're going to get diplomats back into Lviv and eventually into Kyiv. And also, they formally announced that we've got a nominee to be the ambassador to Ukraine. And I hope that the U.S. Senate will act with alacrity on getting her confirmed, especially those knuckleheads that are so critical of the president so far. Let's see if they can get her confirmed. She's already been confirmed once as an ambassador, so there's no real good reason for her not to get confirmed quickly. The other thing was that the Secretary Austin, is now talking about winning, talking about Ukraine winning. This is such an important shift in language, because until now it's been about, help Ukraine, keep them in the fight. I mean, that's awful to me, because that just prolongs it, and it doesn't push us to make policy decisions necessary to achieve what is really the best end state. But when you talk about winning, that means pushing the Russians back to the pre-24 February line. That means getting Ukrainians who are deported and kidnapped, getting them back home to Ukraine. And that means a long-term commitment to eventual restoration of full Ukrainian sovereign territory, i.e. Donbass and Crimea. So this was important. And I suspect tomorrow, when Secretary Austin hosts the chiefs of defense or the ministers of defense from 40 different countries at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, they're going to talk about this, about what does winning mean, and what else can we get to Ukraine that will help them win. Okay, why don't I stop there? And I think we got 45 minutes, and questions from you or everybody that's participating.
Before I hand off the reins to Deborah, if I can just remind everyone, please write your questions into the chat, and they can then be taken from there. But for now, thank you for those starting words. I look forward to hearing far more from Deborah. Here we go.
Thank you, and I apologize for coming in late. Technical issues and ended up on my iPad. But good morning, Charlie. Good morning, Ben. Good to see you, and so glad we could do this special event. So I listened at least to a part of what you said, Ben, and I think you make some very important points. One comment just as we start, which is it would be great to get our embassy back in there. I do note, and I think few people know, including probably in this audience, that there's a piece of legislation dating from the 80s that basically puts the onus on whomever is leading the mission to be accountable to what's called the Accountability Review Board, which is a different accountability review board than within our military. And literally, it is something that organizations are pushing to change, for there is no risk taking, or all responsibility and accountability falls on the chief of mission in a way that it doesn't exist within our military. So just a caveat on why they're being a little cautious. But Ben, I wanted to take advantage of the fact that we had worked together when we were rebuilding our forces in Europe. And I know that you played a huge role in this, and it was not an easy process. For at the time when Russia first went into Crimea, we were also still heavily involved in Afghanistan, pivoting to the Indo-Pacific, and we had cut back our forces. But you argued at that time, which I thought was excellent, which is shifting our assets to Europe meant training for US troops for a more conventional form of warfare, and in that to oppression, after years of counterinsurgency operations in the wide expanses of Afghanistan where we enjoyed air superiority. So in your view, did the ensuing years of expanded exercises across Europe and into the Arctic help strengthen the US military's capability to confront this more traditional foe? And what changes do you expect in US military doctrine and training after this war?
Well, Ambassador, thank you. You were generous. I think that first of all, we learned an awful lot from the Ukrainians as we began to help train them at the Yavoriv Training Center there, starting about 2015. So many of them had experienced what it was like to be under Russian artillery fire, rocket fire. It was a reminder of the lethality of the modern battlefield and how drones were playing such an important role. And so that what we learned from them caused us to change our own training scenarios, that we had to shift from preparing units to go to Afghanistan, for example, to fighting a high intensity conflict. So our training center at Hohenfels and Grafenwehr, for example, as well as exercises that we did in Poland and Lithuania and Romania, we went back to dealing where the enemy has drones, where the enemy has overwhelming firepower, where the enemy has all these capabilities. And it caused us to have to rethink how do you protect yourself? How do you conceal your electromagnetic signature, for example, things we never had to worry about in Afghanistan. It also forced us to look at logistics. The amount of ammunition that was consumed in Afghanistan on a typical daily basis was minuscule compared to what we're seeing in Ukraine today. You know, the 180,000 rounds of artillery ammunition that the administration has promised to Ukraine. When I heard 180,000, I thought, wow, that's a lot. But then you start doing the math, that's really only 2,000 rounds per howitzer. So this is actually enough ammunition for 7 days of intensive conflict, which is probably how they'll be used. So 140,000, and there's got to be another 100, 180 behind it, and another. And I imagine Secretary Austin is going to be leaning on allies to help fill in some of that. So we did make adjustments, but also the whole Army started making adjustments. Even while we still had people in Afghanistan, the whole Army training system and the Air Force changed to meet this new this new threat.
Well, as a follow-on to your earlier comments about the visit that took place yesterday, and the announcements of further assistance both last week and then what came out today in the press, what equipment can and should the U.S. and other countries further provide to Ukraine? I mean, you're mentioning ammunition. There was the list that came out last week. What else is missing from, allies and partners?
The capability that is needed to hit deep into the Russian rear area to destroy or neutralize their artillery, their rocket launchers, because that's, first of all, that's what's killing so many civilians, and to prevent the Russians from being able to get back up on their feet and launch this new attack. Right now, they're kind of vulnerable. Actually, they're still rebuilding, they're still reconstituting. All of these attacks that are happening along the 300-mile front are local, as they're probing, trying to find the weaknesses, trying to find where do they want to launch their main attack. And so now is the chance for Ukraine to prevent the Russians from ever getting back up on their feet. We don't want to just sit and wait to be attacked, is what I'm saying. So long-range artillery, rocket launchers, things that can shoot 40, 50, 70, 80 kilometers, that's the kind of weapon systems that are needed. Obviously, drones provide that capability. The UK's announcement yesterday that they're looking to provide Brimstone, which is an anti-ship missile. This is excellent because that will keep the Russian Navy further away, because the Russian Navy is just sitting out there launching missiles into cities,
right,
killing innocent people. So giving the Ukrainians something that can keep the Navy out of the fight, that would be very significant. And then finally, of course, the Ukrainians have done a great job with their air defense assets that they have. The Russian Air Force barely shows up in Ukraine. It's launching missiles from Russian airspace because they fear getting shot down, as they should. The Russian Air Force is not that well trained. They can keep a plane horizontal, but that's about it. And so we want to make sure that Ukraine continues to have meaningful air defense systems at short range as well as the upper altitude. Those are the capabilities I think that are still needed.
Well, in relation to what you just said, the Black Sea is a strategically important area in the current conflict. And you've argued that the US and NATO need to do much more to counter Russia's naval presence. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So it was very important that our Turkish ally use their authority under the Montreux Convention, Article 19, to close the straits to Russian warships. So the Russians obviously would love to have been able to bring up another ship to replace the Moskva that was destroyed. But the Turks are not allowing them to do this. This is a big deal. That also means those ships cannot be repositioned somewhere else. They can't. They're literally bottled up. That was important. Now, Turkey, I was in Istanbul last week for several days doing some research on Black Sea security, and the Turks did not invoke Articles 20 and 21, which would have officially blocked U.S. or the Royal Navy or anybody else, non-littoral states, from entering the Black Sea. But they unofficially asked us not to do that. And so we've respected their wishes not to apply to come up into the Black Sea. I understand that. I would like to see us go in and do freedom of navigation operations, not just yield the Black Sea. And our Turkish allies are very reluctant to confront. I mean, for them, it's the same thing as us not putting a no-fly zone up or putting boots on the ground. For them to send their ships into the Black Sea area to challenge the Russians would be the exact same thing. So there's reluctance there. The Romanians, I was in Constanta 3 weeks ago, visiting Romanian Navy, talking to one of their minesweeping units. They've been out there, but obviously they're not going to go challenge the Russians by themselves either. So we're in a situation where the Russian Navy has deterred us from doing anything. So we've got to figure out if we're not going to put more presence there, what can we do that enables the Ukrainians to protect themselves against Russian attack? So anti-ship missiles, number one. The ability, something that could hit Sevastopol. I mean, if you can wreck the maintenance facilities and the refueling facilities at Sevastopol, their base, then the Navy's going to be out of the fight. But also, I think there is potential with what we call unmanned, maritime unmanned systems, basically drones for the Navy. These are particularly effective for anti-submarine warfare. If we could deliver some of those, you could fly these in and then transport them and get them to the Ukrainians in Odessa. They put those in the water. It makes life very difficult for Russian submarines. And I do anticipate that the Russians are going to start using submarines to be able to launch missiles because they see how vulnerable their ships are.
Well, there's pressure on the Russian general staff to deliver some sort of victory for the May 9th celebrations. But as you've noted, they have not called up reservists. What does this mean for further land offensive operations or land-based?
Yeah, the 9 May milestone, I believe that. I believe that this is such a significant day that, I mean, they have this massive parade every year, as you know. I always wanted to go to that parade too, to see it. But it will be very awkward if they're not able to show something. And so I think there is, exactly as you say, huge pressure on the general staff to deliver something, and that's going to force them to perhaps start before they really are ready, before they have sorted out logistics, before they've gotten units rebuilt. But still, the fact that they've chosen, if this is accurate, and I've seen this now, I've heard it from 2 or 3 different people, that they are not mobilizing reserves. That means that they have decided there's not going to be another phase, at least not this year. So they're going to try and consolidate whatever it is they've gotten and build that up, and then try to rebuild themselves, and then count on us to lose interest so that next year they pick it back up again. That's what I think is the long game, because certainly they're not going to walk away from this just with having settled for a totally destroyed Azov coast. And by the way, this is bad news still for Ukraine, because I think the Kremlin's long-term objective is the absolute destruction of the Ukrainian state, the depopulation of Ukraine. And so there will be not 1 ruble invested in rebuilding Mariupol. 0. They have no interest in that. They just want to make sure that Ukraine could never recover economically. And that's why they're either murdering Ukrainians or they're deporting them somewhere else in Russia. Tens of thousands have already been taken out. So that's what I think is going to happen. Now, they are still, I mean, they're looking for people my age to come drive trucks, volunteers. Actually, I'm too old for that. 60. I think they were up to the age of 60. I just missed that one. You know, there are some Libyans that have been seen on the battlefield, some Syrians. The Wagner group is, which now has a new name, I think Liga, something like that, has been recruiting. But they've got such serious manpower shortages and human resources problems that I don't think they've got the wherewithal to go any further, which is why I think this is such a decisive phase of the campaign. Your war is a test of wills as much as it is a test of logistics. They are at the edge of what they've got other than nuclear weapons. So when we talk about winning, that means, all right, let's take advantage of this. Let's make sure that they never have the ability to threaten their neighbors again. And it was important that Secretary Austin specifically said that we want to damage the Russians so much that they cannot continue to threaten their neighbors.
Well, in this war, Russia has not conducted major cyber attacks or has been prevented from doing so. And Ukraine has been helped by many allies and others calling on non-state actors to help hack into Russian systems. In your view, how will Ukraine's use of cyber influence NATO's cyber strategy?
Well, this is going to be I'm sure that all of our cyber warriors, including, the Center of Excellence there in Thailand, as well as U.S. Cyber Command back in the States, and in the cyber organizations within the NATO structure, are all going to school on this, on what we're seeing. I certainly expected, in addition to being wrong about how the Russians were going to perform militarily, I also had expected a much more significant use of cyber by the Russians at the beginning of this attack. And it really wasn't there. I remember when I saw President Zelensky on day 4 walking around with his cell phone, I thought, how in the hell is his phone still working? I mean, I couldn't believe that. So the fact that the Russians did not shut down all the networks, cell towers, cyber networks, either it's because they couldn't, or they were so arrogant, they planned to use the Ukrainian cell service themselves. In fact, that's part of the reason so many Russian generals have been killed, because they're on cell phones on Ukrainian cell service, which makes it very easy to geolocate and target. I would also say, I knew, for example, that Estonia had been sending in teams to Ukraine, helping them to prepare. And in a sort of humorous way, I had a chance about 10 weeks ago. I met the head of the Russian or the Ukrainian gas business, the system, and I asked him about vulnerability. He laughed. He said, "We're not vulnerable at all. We are completely analog. There is no digital infrastructure that runs the gas pipelines in Ukraine. It's a guy out there turning a big wheel." So it could be that they weren't as vulnerable in some areas as I might have expected, as we might have expected. But I also think that the Russians know that the West, particularly the UK and the US, have significant advantages in offensive cyber. I mean, that if we wanted to, that we could completely obliterate their networks. And so I think that's part of the reason that they haven't been as aggressive in using cyber as we might have expected, which should inform our thinking, our concern, which I think is exaggerated, about whether or not they would use nuclear weapons.
Well, I wanted to shift now to the, talking also about the future of NATO. Obviously, in Finland and Sweden, Russia's unprovoked attack and its brutal killing of unarmed civilians has led to a significant change in the public's posture towards NATO membership. And in Finland, the government has presented its report to the parliament on the pros and cons of joining. In your view, what capabilities would Finland, let's speak of Finland since you are in Helsinki. I wish I were there. What capabilities would Finland bring to NATO, and what pushback would you expect within NATO, let alone Russia?
I think there's three things that come to mind immediately when I think about, the possibility of Finland joining the alliance, if that's what Finns want to do. First of all, the capability of Finnish armed forces is all out of proportion to the size of the standing professional military. I've been on several exercises where the Finns would do this mobilization. It's incredible. It's certainly the best in Europe, and better than anything we have, where in very short amount of time, a large number of soldiers that are equipped, armed, reported, ready to go. It's amazing. Obviously, this is a result of centuries of living next to Russia, and having that long border. But they've done it, and I've watched it in disbelief at very early stages of how well they were able to do live fire exercises and so on. So that brings a real capability that will actually strengthen NATO's deterrent effect in the Baltic region. Even though we'll be adding several hundred kilometers of border, it actually gets stronger. And that goes to the second part. The Finnish Air Force, along with the Swedes and the Norwegians, have been practicing training together as if the whole Scandinavian airspace is one airspace. So there's already great interoperability in the air, which again strengthens us, would strengthen the alliance in the north in terms of air and missile defense. And then thirdly, when I think about the Baltic Sea, we already have an advantage over the Russians in that you have the Danish Straits are controlled by Denmark and a good partner, Sweden, on one side. The number of allies from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany around the Baltic Sea. Adding Finland really complicates the problem for the Russians. Should they attempt to do anything in the Baltic Sea, this will make it extra difficult for them, because now you've got a very effective, not large, but a very effective Finnish coastal defense, both in terms of maritime, but also anti-ship capabilities. So it's a gigantic plus. One other thing that I would mention is Finland, and by the way, if I was talking to a group of Romanians or Germans or Brits right now, I would say exactly the same thing. Finland has demonstrated this a focused effort on building societal resilience, helping young people. I was talking to a Finnish officer at lunch today who about how young kids start getting education early about how to identify fake news, disinformation, things like that. That's impressive. And the government treats all of its citizens like adults and explains, okay, yeah, if there's a disaster, here's what you've got to do. What you and I, even though I'm much older than you are, what you and I will recall, as kids, how the TV, they would say, this is a public service announcement in case of a national, that, or, those sorts of things. That's happening in Finland, and I think this is a good thing.
Well, I have many more questions, but I'm conscious of time, so I thought we'd open it up to questions from our audience here. And Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you to see what's come in terms of questions.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. We've so far had only one question, although I'm sure this being Finland, once that gets asked, there's going to be a load of questions after that.
Yeah, that's overwhelming for a Finnish audience to get with.
I mean, the one question we have is from Olli Ruohomäki, who's a non-resident visiting fellow at FIIA, but his day job is in the Finnish Foreign Ministry and has spent a lot of time in Afghanistan and other places. But he says he's asking whether or not you could elaborate on the notion of Ukraine winning, saying that this is immensely important and a shift in the narrative and takes the fight to a new level. You've commented on this to some degree. What would you expect from the U.S. then? Continued arms deliveries, I guess?
Yeah. So, of course, if we say when, somebody should define that. Somebody like the president, or the secretary should lay out, this is what we mean when we say when. What is the desired end state? And, we never got this right in Afghanistan after 20 years. We never articulated what the desired outcome is in any meaningful way. And we went through 4 administrations without any president talking to the Congress and explaining, okay, we're changing the original end state, and here's why it's going to cost $2 trillion and why it's worth it. So that never happened. So I think it's important that the Biden administration and others explain what that means. And obviously, this is not over the heads of the Ukrainians. I mean, at the end of the day, Ukraine is a sovereign country, which is what this is all about, has to decide what is their desired end state. But everything I've seen and heard from Kyiv is that they absolutely want full restoration of territorial integrity, all of their kidnapped, deported citizens brought back. And then, of course, there's going to be a Marshall Plan, part 2, to rebuild Ukraine. Ukraine missed out on the original Marshall Plan because of the Soviet Union back in the after the war. There's going to be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of work that has to be done, which hopefully we'll be able to use frozen Russian assets to be liquidated to pay for a big chunk of that. But the key is getting Russian troops minimum back to pre-24 February. They should not be allowed to be rewarded at all for what they've done since the 24th of February. And then a long-term commitment to full restoration, which is what the West did by never recognizing Lithuania's annexation, for example. I mean, these things matter. That long-term commitment, I think, is important. Now, pretty easy for me to say that. What does that actually mean? Even the United States does not have unlimited assets to just keep sending shiploads of ammunition to Ukraine over the coming years. I think the Secretary Austin talked about long-term security cooperation, foreign military financing so that Ukraine can begin to purchase Western weapon systems, because even no matter how many former Warsaw Pact countries there are in NATO, their ammunition is going to run out also. So these old Soviet-style weapon systems are no longer going to be usable. I think that's a part of it. But I hope comes out of this is a recognition that we have to have a strategy for the Black Sea region. I mean, as much as I like Ukrainian culture and admire the Ukrainian people, strategically, why we care about Ukraine is because of where it sits on the map. And it's about the Black Sea region. And so the president has got to be able to articulate to the Congress and the American people why the Black Sea region is so important. Then our ambassadors can carry out policy that's rooted in a regional strategy. It'll make sure we fix our relationship with Turkey. It helps us think through what kind of a relationship do we want to have with Ukraine. We need to fix that bilateral relationship before we invest time in worrying about getting them into NATO.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a few questions here, but I can't help to ask a question. Many of us remember a lot of hand-wringing last fall. I'll say about August, September, about how the West has failed and we just couldn't do anything right. And evacuation from there. Now, fast forward about 6 months. It's hard to for anyone to say they truly would have predicted the level of unity in terms of sanctions, political statements, in terms of weapon shipments, how the EU has stepped up. Any thoughts on this? Which one of these two readings is correct?
Well, I always bet on the United States. We've never been perfect 1 hour of our entire existence. But at the end of the day, you know, Churchill said, the doggone Americans, they'll always get it right after they've tried everything else. And eventually we do get it right. And we are able to correct some mistakes. And I think, you know, the emphasis of the Biden administration on repairing our relationships with our allies, on emphasizing, I mean, you know, on the inaugural address, there's 1,000 different stakeholders trying to get their thing into the president's inaugural address, right? The fact that he used up several lines of his inaugural address talking about the importance of alliances, that was huge. And he set about doing that. And I think Secretary Blinken, they should be working on his statue right now. The work that he did back in the fall, I have to say, and Deborah will have a view on this, but probably the best comprehensive diplomatic effort by the United States I've seen since the Dayton Peace Accords, where it was serious consultation, not, okay, guys, this is what you're all going to do, or informing them on the way out, but a real effort at every layer of our our Foreign Service Officer Corps. That I think that accounts for it. Now that stems from the top. You know, I may have disagree with some things that coming out of the administration from the president, but this effort, I think that comes from the top. And also the Congress seems to be, when it comes to NATO, there's more bipartisan effort than there is on almost anything else that we do, which is plain for everybody to see. I think that accounts for a lot of this. And then I'll go back to President Zelensky. I mean, I have 3 sisters. They probably, 2 of them could not find Ukraine on the map, but they love President Zelensky. They see him on TV and they're like, God, that guy's amazing. So the power of positive leadership, I think that counts for a lot of this.
Great, thank you. Now, as I was expecting, the proverbial ketchup bottle has now cracked, I think. So, 2 questions in a row from here. One, how far would U.S. and other allies go in defending Finland in case Russia attacks it while in the process of joining NATO or the process is ongoing? And then we're soon going to move to Crimea, but first a question on Poland. What role do you see Poland having going forward? And I might interject and add Germany too.
Well, of course, I could not predict what the administration would do if Russia launched some sort of preemptive strike on Finland to whatever. But after what I've seen over the last 2 months of how the administration has come about on its policy, and again, I would say this no matter what audience I was talking to right now, it's hard to imagine the administration not taking a very aggressive response to more than just delivering weapons to Finland. I think it'd be hard to imagine that. But there's things that the administration can do, and there's no more sanctions left. I mean, there's not much else you can do to Russia in that case. But some things to remind them how vulnerable they are. You know, they have a Navy base in Tartus in Syria. I could imagine us putting a quarantine around that. Doing a big snap exercise in Georgia to remind them that since they've taken their troops out of Abkhazia or South Ossetia, how vulnerable they are there, and you know, challenge them on their perimeter. I think, and also getting the truth to Russian citizens is a part of this. Half of the Russian population, I'm sure, believes every word that Putin says, including Russians who live in Frankfurt. That that have access to all the news. They believe it. But I think we would have to launch an intensive information effort that's ongoing to reach the Russian population. On Poland and Germany, what are they doing right now? Is that what you're asking?
Well, kind of, both could have different roles within the Transatlantic Alliance, and it's up to their political leadership, military capability development, and things where it goes. Okay,
well, the Poles, like the Lithuanians, Latvians, and Estonians, are like, I told you, so they've got about 400 years of really bad history with Russia, and so they've always been worried about this. Fortunately, we've reacted late, but not too late, and Poland has become the epicenter for bringing in all of this aid, both humanitarian as well as military aid. Also Slovakia, Romania, Hungary still is an obstacle, which is very frustrating. But Poland, their offer of giving the MiGs, I wish that was a mistake by the administration. That should have happened immediately. If that was to happen today, there'd be no question. I think we would have done it. But back then, the administration was still not ready, unfortunately. And so we screwed that up collectively. The Poles did, and we did. But the administration has acted faster now, pushing air defense, 2 batteries of Patriots, for example, into Poland, because the Poles do worry that they will become a target. And I think their concern is understandable. I think it's unlikely, but Poland is playing a critical role there, and it's becoming increasingly important for us. I am sure that the alliance at the Madrid summit is going to decide that permanent basing in NATO's eastern flank is the right thing, that we're going to toss out the NATO-Russia Founding Act, and we will see some form of permanent basing in Romania, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. I don't know what that means in terms of numbers, but I feel very confident that's going to happen. Germany, of course, I live in Frankfurt. There is a massive debate going on inside the coalition government right now about what to do. They are going to move forward with this 100 billion euro to fill all the holes in their own yard, to fix what needs to be fixed. And I do believe that the Bundestag is going to move forward on the 2% as part of the defense spending. That's going to happen, but that's separate from what they're doing to help Ukraine. There's still this huge segment of German society that is either pacifist or what the Germans call Kremlin-Verstehers or Russland-Verstehers. They sympathetic, guilt, all these things that, and the left half of the SPD, which is the ruling party in the coalition, they still have a very strong grip on what's going on, and Chancellor Scholz has not been as forceful as I had hoped he might be. So they're being pulled. I think what Germany needs to do is, or what's feasible, is say, okay, we're not willing to give up armored vehicles, or we don't want to do something that looks too aggressive. We are worried about nuclear attack, and you Americans, you don't care because you're on the other side of the ocean. We will be ground zero. I mean, that's what the Germans all believe, that if it goes nuclear, they're going to bear the brunt of it. So they're concerned. And I would say, all right, well then, Germany, do what you do best. Big logistics, transportation, you organize take over the organization of delivery of all this stuff. Turn it into a business and make it happen. And also, Germany, step up. You and the Netherlands be the framework nations for air and missile defense over the Baltic region. You already have Patriot. You have other capabilities. Take responsibility for protecting European citizens and infrastructure if you're not willing to go into Ukraine, and let everybody else focus on what's in front of us.
Deborah, there are a few different questions on Russian red lines in Crimea, but do you want to jump in here?
No, go ahead. I'd like to see the audience, have a chance.
I'll combine two different questions, but they both have to do with Russian red lines and particularly Crimea, and whether or not, based on Putin's communication speeches and so on, seems like holding on to Crimea is a red line, and whether or not, however you'd like to phrase it, the West or anyone else should try to limit Ukraine to not have them try to retake Crimea if they were so inclined to do. Or is this a matter of sovereignty where we say, well, it may lead to Russia doing, but your war?
Yeah. So this is why I differentiated in my definition of winning that minimum back to pre-24 February. Number two, long-term commitment to reunification of Ukraine, full restoration of their territorial integrity, which means Crimea and Donbass. You're right. It's hard to imagine any scenario where Putin, while he's still alive, would agree to anything like that. But I think this is where, we're not in the 17th, 18th, 19th century. This is in the 21st century. The big powers making decisions over the heads of the smaller countries about their sovereignty. It doesn't feel right. And if we're talking about democracy versus autocracy, I think this is the right objective for us to support. If this is what Ukraine wants to do, we should support that. Now, what does that look like? Nobody in the world should do anything that looks like official recognition of Russian control of Crimea. Not a single ship from anywhere should sail into a port in Crimea, deliver something, pick it up something. These are small things, but these are how I think you apply pressure in a non-kinetic way, in the economic domain, in the legal domain, in the diplomatic domain. Don't acknowledge or recognize anything. Continue to shine the light on their abuse of the Tatars. That's why Turkey does not acknowledge Russia's annexation of Crimea. So there are some things that we can do short of enabling a Ukrainian invasion. Although I would 100% support if Ukraine decided they were going after Sevastopol to wreck that seaport, for example, or wreck that big giant bridge that's illegal that connects the Kerch Straits to mainland Russia. I hope we are seriously looking for ways to help them do that. Look, I think that now I don't know if anybody on this call will agree with me, but I think that we are seeing the beginning of the collapse of the Russian Federation in about 5 years. The weaknesses and the corruption that have been exposed over the last 2 months, things that I think most people sort of suspected or knew about. Yes, they're corrupt. Yes, they have an unhealthy population. Yes, this and this, but the extent of the corruption, the extent of the rot inside of Russia, exacerbated by the brain drain that's happening now. People are getting out of there. Elites, educated people, they're getting out of there. I think that it's feasible that 5 years from now, that the whole thing collapses. And I've had people say, "Are you crazy?" Yeah, I haven't found too many people that in 1988 or 83 said, "You know what, the Soviet Union is going to collapse in 5 years." No, I can't find anybody that thinks that. So here in Russia, you've got a massive country, but a population of about 140 million that is largely unhealthy. Their economy is based on selling weapons and on exporting energy. And more European countries are finding alternative sources. So unless China and India can completely make up the difference, their economy is going to run into bad problems. And all this corruption over the decades has resulted in a very expensive, terrible military. And I just don't know how much longer the Russian population is actually going to put up with this. I don't know what this implosion looks like, but I can see bits and pieces starting to drift away, you know, that are on the periphery. Chechnya, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Transnistria. I mean, none of these places have benefited a bit from being part of the greater Russia.
Thank you. Deborah, do you have any last thoughts here? Transatlantic Alliance?
No, just to one, thank Ben, who has been in the forefront of explaining to audiences, both in the United States and overseas, what is at stake and the change in U.S. engagement and what it portends for the future. For he knows how hard it was, as I said in the beginning, to rebuild U.S. interest in our presence in Europe and interest in the transatlantic, and you've been a key part of helping rekindle this. I would also agree with something that Ben said. What has happened in Ukraine has led to the first in many a year consistent, high-level, broad messaging from this administration, from our diplomatic service, which we have not seen. We have been weak in the information space. And here's an example of where we can be strong and preemptive. And I think there's food for thought in that domain as well, not just the military domain and so forth, for other examples, including other challenges such as China, India, and others. But thank you, Ben, and thank you to the entire FIIA team for pulling this together and finally helping me get in after 18 tries.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah and Leo, for arranging the Transatlantic Currents seminar series. I think today we've again seen, although by great luck, we had Ben here in Finland, but your ability to get people as guests to talk to us that normally would probably not look at FIIA is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for that. And I think in the end, we've heard a hopeful message about us collectively stepping it up, and then having the U.S. Once again, as it refound its way after walking a few different directions. The U.S. I think has found its way on this, and let's see if it continues in other parts of the globe. So thank you to the audience, thank you to Ben, thank you to Deborah, and have a good rest of the day.